Hey everybody, this is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat.
Hi Omar, how are you?
Fantastic, Lori, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Excited about our guest today.
Yes, April Likins. She is going to help us de-stress, get all this craziness out of our way so that we can get our cortisol level straight so we can lose some weight, because stress is one of the worst things that our bodies can go through, not only for just our overall health, but, weight loss, of course, too.
Yeah. And if you're burnt out, she can help you with that too. So we're really happy to have her on the show today. And I think you guys are going to love her.
Yeah, no. So let's jump into the show.
Okay.
Hey, April, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi, Omar.
Hi, April.
Hey, Lori.
Thank you. Thank you so much for stopping by today.
Thank you for having me.
You have a lot of information to impart. How to de-stress.
Yes. And what a challenge these days, right? The last couple of years.
Oh, for sure. And we're just really happy to have you. You have a lot of experience in stress management, but you're more now a stress management and burnout coach. And so I think that's really a crucial position to have, because so many people are going through that, whether they're working or not working. They could be just a mom, right? And not just a mom, but a mom. And, but you don't have to have a 9-to-5 job to experience this.
It's true. And unfortunately, there's no shortage of stress these days.
Yeah, no, it's all over the place. Like you said,
right.
Laura, you definitely don't have to go to work to find some stress. So tell us a little bit about your journey specifically, because, you being a health coach as well, and we usually have issues that we've overcome that propel us to actually want to help other people. So can you tell us a little bit about your background story?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm actually a former designer turned board certified health coach. So like you, I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and then I went on to study at Duke, and then went and got my national boards. But I'm really just fiercely passionate about helping professionals reduce their stress, find balance, and optimize their sleep so they can walk in their passions and their purpose and really just feel their best inside and out. And it really, like you said, it started way back for me. I would say probably 15 plus years ago, I got really into health and wellness. And I'll preface it with, I was totally not living a healthy lifestyle up until that point in my life. But at that time, my dad was diagnosed with a really aggressive cancer, kind of out of nowhere. And they gave him, he was young, he was like 49, and it was a really rare aggressive prostate cancer. And at 49, they gave him a 50-50 shot. And we were really close. So he was just an awesome dad, one that was, a friend and a mentor and a coach and all the things, right? So when he was diagnosed, I was completely devastated. And I really wanted to just figure out what was causing the rise and all the stuff that we've seen over the last couple of decades, aside from genetics. And of course, the answer is epigenetics. And so that's when I was just kind of looking into, what's in our food and our water and our lifestyle and stress, and how all the, the different trauma and all the things can play a role in, in disease. So we ended up, revamping our diet and lifestyles together. And like looking back, I firmly believe that living more holistically really helped to prolong his life. And I'm so grateful I had those extra couple of years with him. And then, so he ended up passing, and it was, really after he passed away, it was kind of like I had made all these healthy changes, right? But then, this grief hit, and this really horribly dark time in my life hit. And I kind of reverted to my old ways of coping with things. And so I was burning the candle both ends. I'm a night owl. I fought that tendency since I was like, I don't know, probably popped out of the womb. I'm wired that way. And so, I would work till like 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't exercising consistently. I wasn't eating consistently. I'm a creative at heart. So I can be in the flow and lose track of time, in that. And so I was completely burning the candle at both ends. And really, I was in some ways kind of coping with my grief with my previous bad habit of workaholism. And I think, that's something that, a lot of us can struggle with at times, we have feelings and things that we don't want to deal with in life because, life is beautiful and amazing at times. And it can also be dark and incredibly painful. And, when times are tough, there's that tendency to kind of turn to those old things, whether it's alcohol or it's workaholism or Netflix binge watching, whatever it is, we can turn to those things. And so, I burned the candle for a couple of years at both ends. And then my health completely collapsed. And when I say collapse, I couldn't get up. So I went from best shape of my life, shredded. I could do one arm push-ups, burpees, all the things. And went to the Caribbean during the largest mosquito outbreak. Second to Zika, lots of things happened during that trip. I came home, couldn't get up. And I couldn't get up for almost a year and a half.
What?
So it was pretty wild. And so I was shuffled from doctors to doctors. It wasn't just immense fatigue. I had trouble finishing my sentences. I had trouble understanding what you were saying to me. I couldn't read. I was laying in bed twitching, had neuropathy, vertigo. My hormones were immediately thrown off. Basically everything that could go wrong in your body went wrong in mine. And so it was really scary. And especially,
was
having
it ever diagnosed?
Yeah, a slew of things. Yeah. Lyme disease, of course. I had mosquito, mold exposure,
mosquitoes is what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yep. A whole ton of things. Past mold exposure. There was a lot of stuff. Of course, hypothyroidism, endometriosis. There's so many different things. But, when you're shuffled from doctor to doctor to doctor, and I saw everybody from, regular MDs to hematologists, to cardiologists, the whole gamut. And they, most of them had no idea what to do with me. And it was hard too. And, so at times they don't believe you. I think it's all in your head and that sort of thing too. And so it was also kind of a lonely and dark time in my life. But a friend, I was just kind of casually hearing about health coaches back then. And I asked on social media, does anybody know of a good health coach? And a friend referred me to one, and she was a FDN, so functional diagnostic nutritionist, I guess is what it stands for. And an RD too. And she changed my life. She had a health collapse herself, which I had no idea until I found her. And she was just 100% in my court, 110%. She was like, we're going to get through this. And it was amazing. And it's so different, as you guys know, doing things holistically versus the, here's another pill, let's do an operation kind of approach too. So she really planted that kind of seed in me too. And so it wasn't until kind of years later that I kind of realized I wanted to be a health coach. I just went through IIN on a whim, really to heal myself. And then about 2 months in, I was like, you know what? I want to pursue this to help others, because there's always a firm, I'm a firm believer. There's a silver lining to everything we go through in life. There's things that we can learn through it. We can grow through it. And there's purpose in the pain. And it's those hardships that can be such fertile ground for growth and for change. And often we do discover our purpose when, we're in those dark places. And often that purpose is not about us, it's about others. So like I said, as a former workaholic and people pleaser, I completely understand just how challenging managing stress can be, and how, my story, if left unchecked, it can lead to, of course, burnout, but really devastating things on our health, our relationships, and our career. And I really, looking back, think it was that lack of balance, that created inflammation and stress and all kinds of stuff that kind of helped to lead up to the health collapse, which of course, when you have a health collapse, you were even more stressed and isolated. So it's just a snowball effect too. But I think
so. Did you, I know that this created this snowball effect of stress. And did you ever realize that that's what was going on with these conditions?
Not until looking back. Yeah. At the time you're just trying to survive. You're like, how do I get up and take care of myself? Because it was, I couldn't drive. It was crazy. And I love cars. I was a former athlete. Like I'm a doer, I'm a goer, I'm a type A hustler, so to be put on your butt for almost a year and a half that was hard. That was very hard in that too. And the last thought I had was, I think there's this like kind of misperception going around right now that like burnout is a syndrome, something that just bam happens to you, when kind of studies are really showing that it's not like something that just happens. It's, it happens really due to unmanaged chronic stress in our lives. But the good news is it's preventable. There's so much we can do to prevent it.
Yeah, I love that message. Yes, that's the good news. And so there's good stress and there's bad stress, right? And how does this stress really affect your physical health in terms of, degradation over time if it's chronic?
Yeah. Well, I kind of often tell clients, it's the analogy of like kind of like driving a car that's out of alignment. If you've ever done that, at first it's subtle and you can kind of get away with it. But if you ignore the engine light that's on or whatever, and you keep going long term, it's going to create uneven wear and tear on your tires. It can destroy your suspension. Over time, it can become harder to steer, lead to accidents and collisions and breakdowns. And our bodies are a lot like, a car that if you don't take care of it and you keep ignoring those lights, over time, it can really just wreak havoc on our health and lead to so many different things that I think we'll get into hopefully here in a minute. But I think backing up, it's like first, what is stress? And I think, stress can essentially, for those listening, can be defined as it's emotional unease. And the thing about it is there's kind of no one size fits all for stress for anyone. It's really based on perceptions, so it's why, two people can go through the exact same experience and have vastly different responses to those stressors. And it's our thoughts and our emotions that are so central to how we view stress. And I ran across a study, I'm blanking on where it was last year, but it was talking about, it's not the stressors in our lives that are so toxic to our health, but it's our perception of them, in that.
That's really an important point. Yeah.
It is, right? Because, life happens and stress is everywhere. But the key, is learning, it's to navigate how those stressors in a way that doesn't damage our health and tear up our bodies, much like kind of the car analogy too. And, and like you said a minute ago, stress can be a good thing. It's part of our survival mechanism. It's that internal,
right,
alarm system that our body has that's really designed to protect us from harm, and it's through that, through those thoughts and emotions and how we perceive that stressor is what determines if our stress response gets activated in the body, that fight, flight, or freeze. And, really triggering the parasympathetic nervous system and releasing, adrenaline and cortisol. And cortisol is that, for those listening, is, the stress hormone too. And so why does stress matter? Well, I found this interesting, and just looking up research last year, that the World Health Organization has dubbed stress the health epidemic of the 21st century, because it's that serious, and it's just linked to so many different things. And kind of back to my story, it's one of those things that can just cause these chain reactions of things and start out really, really subtle, but, left unchecked, it can lead to mental health challenges. Stress is linked to insomnia and sleep issues, type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, insulin resistance, weight gain, obesity, which I know you guys know a ton about, chronic pain, heart disease, cancer. The list just goes on and on and on, of what
it's a vicious cycle,
Yeah.
It really, in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So April, I guess the $1 million question is, because a lot of us just push through what we perceive as stress or struggles and just keep on going. Like, what is it that we could look out for that we know we actually have a problem really on the horizon?
Well, that's a good question, because again, it just varies from person to person. And so I think it's listening to your body. I think that's one of the most important things we can do daily, is just kind of check in with ourselves and just, just have a few moments, once a day, a couple times a day, just to ask yourself, what do I need today to thrive? How am I doing today? And the body is so intelligently designed. It's amazing. It'll tell you what it needs. Sometimes it's going to be like, Omar, like you need to slow your roll. Like you've been pushing all day long, like, and I need a break. We need some sunshine or some vitamin D, and, or like Lori, hey, we need some water. It's been a while. We need a glass, in that. And so first and foremost, it's just really tapping into your intuition, and then also kind of being aware of where those hidden stressors might be in your life. And it's going to vary from person to person, because again, what stresses me out is going to be different than probably what stresses you guys out.
But April, to that point too, I know this is probably diving in a little too deep, but we have conscious stress and subconscious stress too. Is that a factor as well? Because if we just don't think that we have stress and we just can't go to sleep at night because our minds are racing, can you talk about that little component of it as well?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it is more subconscious too, but that's when, you can do some practical steps and work on things like breathing to kind of regulate the nervous system, and do other things too. And just being aware of thinking about what you're thinking about too at times. And sometimes we have all these, thousands and tens of thousands of thoughts flowing throughout our minds throughout the day, and many of them are negative. And so sometimes just tuning into what we're thinking about can be really powerful too. And for some people that's hard to do. And so sometimes just writing, and that automatic writing can be helpful to kind of, just tune into where there may be some worry and some anxiety or dread or frustration or something.
That's really great. Yeah. So on that note, what are some telltale signs that we're experiencing negative or too much stress?
That's a great question. Again, there's no one size fits all. So some things to kind of watch out for, physically, headaches and migraines are a big one. Those can be big triggers. Pain, chronic pain can be another indication, especially like neck pain, back pain. I hear often I work with a lot of professionals and high achievers, and they will notice they have a lot more neck pain when their stress levels are higher too. One telling me, she told me like a month ago, it cracked me up. She's like, I often don't know that I'm stressed until I'm on Zoom meetings, and then I watch my shoulders kind of creep up to my ears, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm stressed.
Yeah,
It's like, it's just seeing herself, in the monitor that she kind of figures it out. But immunity, chronic stress is linked to a decreased immunity. So if you're getting lots of colds and frequent illnesses, that could be, something to kind of make note of. Digestive issues is a big one. There's a huge connection between like IBS and stomach issues and stress. And of course, the gut microbiome is extremely sensitive to stress levels, to fatigue, insomnia. If you notice you're having appetite changes, so maybe you're eating more. It depends. Sometimes people eat less when they're stressed, and other people eat more. And and things like increased blood pressure and skin issues. Sometimes hives and rashes can be an indication, that you're stressed as well. And then mentally and behaviorally, of course, that shows up in things like, frustration, feeling overwhelmed, edginess, moodiness, brain fog, anxiety, depression, and just, racing thoughts and kind of overreacting to things too. And sometimes just decreased productivity at work.
So to Omar's point, can somebody experience chronic stress but not realize it?
I think so. Yeah. We don't know what we don't know. Right. And that's, I think, anywhere in life. And so that's where it can be helpful to have wise people around us that we trust, that can sometimes point out the things that maybe we're missing, about ourselves, because we've all got those blind spots.
Mm-hmm. So I know the big segue, because this is not just an isolated point of the day where we experience stress. It rolls into our sleep and it affects our sleep. Can you talk about that connection, as well as why sleep's so important in this cycle that we live in on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it is. So sleep, sleep is the superpower to really everything, and it's really why you're starting to finally hear about it all over the place. It's why, a lot of the top athletes in the world are very openly talking about sleep and making it a priority. And you're hearing a lot of CEOs talk about that too, because if you want to show up in the world and feel your best inside and out and be able to handle the stressors that are coming your way, it really starts with getting sleep. And just as a fun tangent, I was looking up sleep stats recently and saw that LeBron James, which most everybody knows who he is, he gets 12 hours of sleep a night, and then he takes naps. He does.
Yeah,
And then he takes naps on top of that too. And so people often joke, if he's not playing basketball, dude is sleeping. And so I thought that was so funny. I was 12 hours, that's legit. That is a lot of sleep.
That's crazy. Too. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard that. And he also that was one of the things that they added on top of the fact, I think he spends 7 figures just on his body and the sleep and all the recovery. So but they threw that the 12-hour sleep days. I was like, this is crazy. How could he do that? But
it is. It's totally crazy. And it goes back to totally geek out on you guys, but a Stanford study back in the early 2000s where they were studying athletes, and they wanted to they weren't really expecting a whole lot. They were kind of oh, we'll just see how sleep affects their performance. And they started with the swim team. And they were blown away when the goal was really just to increase their sleep by, I don't know, an hour or something a night. And their performance went through the roof. They started shattering records, doing all kinds of stuff. And they were not expecting that. So then later Stanford went on to study the basketball team. Same thing, their reaction times were faster. They were able to jump higher. They had better free throws and, and everything else. And so it's sleep is just one of those things that, it's tied to everything. It's tied to, of course, our metabolism. It's tied to stressors. And, we've all had crummy days, right? Where you don't get sleep and you wake up and it's a different day. It feels like a different day than when you feel like you're really.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's you're a different person,
you are.
In terms of how your body functions. Yeah. It's really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I can conquer the world when I've slept well. Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
So a lot of people, when, they're trying to get to sleep, they just sit there and they lay there forever with their eyes wide open. What do you suggest they do if they have trouble sleeping?
That's a great question. And so, so often just deep breathing can be really helpful. Breathing
is extremely, yes.
It is. Yeah. It's the simplest and quickest way to regulate our nervous system and really switch into the friendly rest and digest system too. And so just a minute or a few minutes of breathing deeply and just in and out for a few minutes can really help to activate that friendly nervous, rest and digest system too, and help you kind of get back to sleep too. I recently got certified in the Heart Math Institute, and they have a technique that's similar where it's heart focused breathing, where you focus on breathing through your heart. Kind of taps into heart rate variability and all that stuff too, but it's something you can do without a device. And you just focus your attention on your heart and you breathe in, slowly and deeply, concentrating on the heart area. And then you just focus on, of something that is calming, or a person or a place, that is relaxing to you or that brings you joy or peace. And you just focus on that for a few minutes. I have clients too that like to actually put their hand on their heart for that, to that technique too. But it's just something you can do anywhere, in the car, before bed, breathing.
It's wonderful.
The great thing about breathing is you can do it anywhere.
Yeah, no, that was great. So April, one of the things that we discussed off air is just the possibility that, two of our favorite things in life affect both our stress and sleep, and that's caffeine and alcohol. Can you talk about the relationship between alcohol, caffeine, and sleep and stress?
Yeah, definitely. And so, all things in moderation, right? Life's meant to be enjoyed. So I'm not going to tell people not to drink caffeine and alcohol by any means. And I do love my matcha latte. So I love caffeine as well too. But I think, with alcohol, first, we've seen over the last couple of years, just the rise in in people drinking far more alcohol just to kind of to cope with just the stress that we've all found ourselves in. And it's tempting to turn to alcohol as a coping mechanism. However, if it's a habit, it can really, again, rev up inflammation, which is not helpful for metabolism, for weight loss, for sleep, for disease, all the things. It's stressful on your liver. And the big one is it's really disruptive to your sleep. And it's in particular, it's that high quality REM sleep that you're after that's so restorative, that the brain is doing so many incredible things in the middle of the night. It's categorizing memories, it's wiping, proteins that are linked to cognitive decline and different things. And it's going through all these amazing cycles, but kind of the more important ones are the deeper sleep and the REM sleep. And that's what studies have shown, that alcohol can really hinder that too. And so, and it also raises your core body temperature too. So you can also just wake up just because you're hot from drinking, alcohol in the evening and that sort of thing too. So, it's not something I would tell anyone to throw out of your diet if you don't feel like that's right for you, but just to be mindful of it, that again, it can really disrupt your sleep and, and probably not something you'd want to do every single night.
Unless you drink too much and you're knocked out, and that's a whole different story.
That's true. That's true. But, it's, and, and it's, again, this lack of sleep, right? It's hard to cope with stress. And again, poor sleep, is linked to obesity and so many studies have shown just one night's sleep, bad sleep, the next day you're more likely to consume 25% more calories.
And carbs.
Yeah, it is, right? Yeah. I've never craved celery or carrots. Like, it never happens.
Right. Yeah. That's a test. If you're really hungry, you'll be hungry for raw broccoli. Exactly. Yeah. It's so true. It really is. But yeah, it revs up the cravings for the salty, the sugary, and like the high fat stuff. So during COVID, we had, enormous stress levels going on. And do you see any change in terms of your clients adapting, adjusting, letting go?
Of stress
of stress, yes. Now that COVID is on the wane.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it does seem like a lot of people are kind of relaxing too, but I think it's just, there's been so much up in the air for people with so many things that's been tough to kind of navigate too. And so lastly, I guess the other thing I wanted to popped into my head with sleep, it's just thinking about, the lack of sleep, it creates this vicious cycle often that, we sleep poorly, or maybe I'm just speaking from experience, but we sleep poorly, so then we lay on the caffeine the next day to try to cope because you're like, oh, I feel so bad. And so it's like an extra cup, another cup, that sort of thing too, and then you have cravings because you didn't sleep well. And so you're craving all the non-broccoli stuff.
Right.
It's not good for you. So then you're like, oh, I've eaten like crap. So you blow off your workout. So then, you're like, oh, you feel guilty about blowing off your workout. So you have a glass of wine at night that just throws off your sleep. And then you wake up crappy and tired the next day. And then the whole cycle starts all over again.
Yeah. That's a really great example of what happens to people. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's where one thing can kind of, like we were talking about the domino, like one thing can lead to a whole nother thing, which can turn into a snowball effect, I think.
And that happens biochemically really in the body too, as well. When we're under stress, the body, we eat up our magnesium stores and we experience more stress and anxiety because we don't have enough magnesium in the body to tamp down on that response. And so it becomes even more vicious, if you will. And so, it's just, everything's interdependent. We need to be aware of that, because if you take care of one thing in your environment or within your body, or say like you do just deep breathing, that's not going to do it completely. You have to do all the other things. And that might include your diet. There are actual stress foods that promote stress. Yeah. Right.
It's true. And I know Armar asked too about caffeine, which that's a big one, right? It's I rarely meet people that don't drink caffeine. And we have such a caffeine culture with the United States and Starbucks and all the things. And so, that's one, of course, that can throw off your sleep, and a lot of people don't realize that, at noon, if you have a cup of coffee, studies show that, at midnight, a quarter of that can potentially still be in your system, depending on metabolism too. And so most people, I guess, in their right mind wouldn't drink a half a cup of coffee or a quarter cup of coffee and, at midnight and try to go to bed. And so experts really kind of recommend experimenting with, your cutoff and figuring out where you thrive. And so for me, I can't really push it beyond, 10 or 11 in the morning because I can feel it. It, affects my sleep that evening. But experts kind of recommend noon as kind of a cutoff to kind of, but again, everybody's got a sweet spot. So figuring out where you're thriving. But I had a client recently she was just struggling with her sleep and she was unsure of why. And we were kind of, looking at a lot of different things, stress and that sort of thing. And I finally asked her, how much caffeine are you drinking? And it was like almost a pot of coffee, and all throughout the day. And so just through trial and error, she started bumping it way back and she was able to figure out, her cutoff is 11 a.m. And really she does best with no more than 2 cups of coffee, which was way off from where she was, she was drinking it. It was a lot more. And just making that switch, it had a huge, profound effect on her sleep. And she just woke up feeling like rested, clear-headed, like she could tackle the day. And it was a total game changer for her. But to your point, it's just changing one thing sometimes can just make a profound effect on how you feel, inside and out. And just, it's amazing.
And also the types of foods that you ingest, as well, outside of caffeine or alcohol, like such as sugar, for example. Sugar if a diet is just not healthy, it's going to affect your sleep no matter what. So
yeah. Definitely. And eating too late can be another one too.
Oh yeah. That
can definitely affect sleep too, just because the body needs a couple hours to digest. And if we're eating a giant meal and jumping straight into bed, it's often uncomfortable laying there.
Right.
It's a lot harder to go to sleep for sure.
So I guess to kind of wrap it up a little bit, I know we have probably a million questions about this because it's such a great topic. Can you describe what an ideal day would be, including practical ways for people to lower their stress levels, as well as maybe a bedtime routine to make this whole thing come together?
Yeah. Wow. That's a tough summary to do because again, everybody's different. And so I've got kind of a slew of different ideas for people to lower their stress levels. And again, the thing is, with any of these, whether it's sleep or stress tips, again, one might work for you and another might work for Lori and another one's out the window for me. So it's so much of it is, and I know you learned that at IIN, it's trial and error, it's experimentation and just seeing what works for you and what doesn't. So we already covered, breathing. So we got that one down, that's the quickest and simplest way to regulate your nervous system when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, you're having trouble sleeping. Most people I've found they're not yogis. They can't just sit in a room and meditate, and so it can be really helpful for people to do a guided meditation. And there's so many great apps out there like Headspace and Calm and Insight Timer. There's a million different apps that can just kind of you can gently follow along with what they're saying. That can be really relaxing and helpful. Exercise is a big one. I know you guys are firm believers in that, just finding ways to move daily that you enjoy is so crucial for reducing your stress, of course, improving your sleep, boosting your mood, helping your waistline, all the things too. And it doesn't have to be HIIT workouts and CrossFit and running and doing all this crazy stuff. Any movement is beneficial to the body and beneficial to stress levels. And that can be as simple as taking a walk in the evening and enjoying the sunset. It's just, figuring out how you like to move, whether that's dance, cardio, Pilates, whatever, strength training, you do you and figure out what you like doing and just make that, a daily priority too. And I find it's helpful for clients and people in general too, that, sometimes life happens and we have busy schedules and you can't always fit in an hour workout. a 15-minute workout is better than no workout, or just a 15-minute walk is better than no walk. So just figuring out ways to make that a priority and scheduling it in to your day can be a complete game changer with stress and sleep too. We talked about sleep, making that a priority and why that's so important. And really, making sure to get that solid 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Don't necessarily have to go all LeBron on it. Get the 12 hours. Yeah. Honestly, I feel like I don't know. If I sleep too much, I feel hungover. I feel like there's a limit.
I feel like I've wasted my day.
No, I just don't
feel
too,
well.
Yeah.
I feel off if I've slept too long.
Right.
Yeah. It's like weird. So yeah. So 12 hours probably for most people will not be in the cards. But
we have a life.
Yeah, exactly. And the key is just making that a priority too. And back to what we were talking about in the beginning, just looking for the hidden stressors, shifting your mindset to what you can control. I mean, so often we get, just frustrated and stressed out over things that are outside of our control. And if we can kind of take a step back and just, let go of the things that we're not able to control, and just focus on what we can, that can be a much more empowering angle to look at things too. Of course, practicing gratitude is a wonderful way to reduce stress levels. And journaling, gratitude can be great, but not everybody's into journaling and writing. And so it can be really helpful just in the evening, just to think even just 3 things that you are grateful for today, or that
went your dog.
Yeah. That went well, or that were wins, just ending on a positive note can really, just lower stress levels too. And then lastly with stress tips, I would say again, scheduling in rest and downtime. And, even if it's that little pockets of time in your day, like 5-10 minutes to, we live in this crazy, always on hyper-connected society, right? Where people can get in touch with us 50,000 different ways. It's annoying at times. And, I always kind of joke and secretly wish we could go back to the 90s, back when I had a pager and I was not a drug dealer.
Yeah, I was going to say, what were you doing with that pager?
I was not. I was young enough that that was when cell phones were way too expensive. And my mom was like, I need some way to keep track of you. But, it's, or even pre-pager where, you could just enjoy life without stuff coming at you constantly. And that, honestly, that could be a whole topic right there that we could go on about another hour.
Totally.
We're just not wired to be as overstimulated and hyperconnected as we are. And that's a big part of the stress response, is the body's just not designed to handle constant interruptions all day long. So if you can, just create in your day little pockets of, just space, if that's sitting outside for 5-10 minutes, or, just doing something relaxing and enjoyable, and treating it in the same way that you would schedule in an important doctor's appointment, and show up for yourself in that same way, because we just can't pour from an empty cup continually and thrive. We've got to recharge our batteries, and we've got to do things that inspire us and fill our cup and, bring us joy. And often that it requires unplugging too, and setting healthy boundaries around the devices and, and the news and social media and all the things too. Those are really crucial, I think, too. And learning to say no as well. So sleep, if we've got time, I've got a couple tips that I can give you guys and listeners if you
oh, absolutely, go for it.
So, like I was saying earlier, the key is finding your sweet spot. First and foremost, it's in between that 7 to 9 hours. You want at least seven hours, because anything beyond that, the studies are showing that it's changing epigenetics and, in your stress hormones the next day and hunger hormones and all the things too. So at least 7, somewhere between 7 to 9. Do you guys know what your sweet spot is? Like what your number is that you feel your best?
7.
Yeah, 7 as well. Yeah, definitely 7.
I'm kind of more 8, sometimes 8.5. It just depends. But that's awesome that you guys know too. And so it's just knowing that number that you feel your best the next day too, and making, of course, sleep sleep a priority. And I don't know if you guys follow Dr. Matthew Walker. He's, one of the world's leading sleep experts. Yeah, he's amazing. I love him. And he has so many wonderful talks and books on sleep and the importance of that. But he often talks about sleep being like landing a plane. And in the evening, you don't just bang out emails, or Slack messages or whatever you're doing, and jump into bed and hope to go to sleep. Like it's way too overstimulating to the body. And adults, much like children, need a bedtime routine. Just like if you have kids, there's like bath time and there's story time and maybe there's playtime, whatever. There's a whole routine to kind of get them ready for bed and unwinding. And as adults, we're no different. It's like landing a plane. Like if you want to survive, your trip, you don't just nosedive that thing and aim for the runway. That's not how you land a plane. You want to gradually descend, and sleep is very similar to that. So I always love that visual and analogy when he said that just stuck with me. I'm like, that's so cool. And it's true that you have to just think of it like gradually descending. And so it's, things like sticking to a schedule, and honoring your body's natural kind of circadian rhythm, trying to go to sleep and wake at a similar time, even on the weekends. That's also optimizing your bedroom for sleep. So you want to make sure that it's dark, it's quiet, it's cool. And, the temperature needs to be, according to, sleep experts on like the National Sleep Foundation, somewhere between like 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think they actually say that the sweet spot is like 64, I believe, which is cool. The body really needs it to be cool to sleep optimally too. And then some people are light sensitive. So there's been some really interesting recent studies that have come out, like the tiny, minute amounts of light in a bedroom, sometimes even like alarm clock light, can keep people up. And so, if you're light sensitive, that might require blackout shades, that could be having sleeping with a sleep mask, that sort of thing too, just to make sure that there's not other things kind of in the bedroom keeping you up too. And then, limiting blue light devices an hour before bed. A lot of people don't know that. I still talk to people often that don't realize that our devices and even the overhead lights at night. That's one thing that I do at night is I'll dim the lights a couple hours before bed. No matter what I'm doing, I just start turning them off. Even if I'm in the kitchen, I turn them on low, just because the overhead lights and our devices, suppress our natural melatonin production and really tell our bodies like, hey, it's not time to go to bed right now, which is what we don't want. So just putting those things away and dimming things even an hour before bed can be really helpful, and freeing to not have anybody able to get in touch with you for, an hour before bed can also be really helpul as well.
Wow. Those are great.
Do you guys have any good tips to add? Because I know you're experts, and we already touched on caffeine, and we touched on not eating too late too, and alcohol. So
those are all great. Yeah. Wonderful tips.
No, they really are. And I guess for the people who are like super shell shocked about the idea of putting their cell phones or TVs down, so that at that hour, I use the blue light glasses, blue light blockers. I'm not 100% sure how effective they work, but I guess the studies say that they do help in at least blocking the blue light. That will help, like you said, the melatonin to still be adequately released so that you can sleep. So I throw that in as a tip as well.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I started doing, I think I just started doing it at the beginning of COVID because I had a client that was kind of doing that. And I was like, I'm a health coach, so I need to up my game here. So the particular client started putting their phone away a couple hours before bed and putting it away in another room, because studies show that, it's so many, I could geek out on all this stuff, but that even the mere presence of a phone, if you can see your phone, not only is it far too tempting to want to pick it up if it's in your visual line of sight, but if you're spending time with your family, studies have shown that if other people can see your phone nearby, it actually diminishes their quality of like the whole relationship, like that their perception of the relationship is lower if there's a phone nearby that versus a phone away. I mean, they're designed to be addictive, right? We've all probably watched the Social Dilemma and then things like that, and seen how powerful they are. And I just realized, like, I'm addicted just like everybody else. And so if I put that thing in the other room, a couple hours before bed,
that's what I do. Yeah.
I don't have the temptation to look at it the way that I do if I can see it. And
right the EMFs as well. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I'm EMF sensitive too.
Oh, so let me ask you ladies real quick, because then I want to jump in and let you have an opportunity to get your information out to the audience, April. But like, where you put your phones outside the room, how do you use an alarm, or do you use an alarm?
Well, I start first. So often, my husband and I will watch, something funny or relaxing or whatever in the evening. And so that's in the living room. So I often just plug it in the kitchen, where it's far enough away from me that I'd have to get up and walk into another room to like check it. And that's too far of a reach for me. So I'm not tempted. So I leave it alone for that hour or two or whatever. But I actually plug mine into the bathroom and leave it. I can hear it in the bathroom. So I have a bathroom off the bedroom. And so I plug it in there for EMF reasons and a lot of reasons too. But yeah, having it too close to you, that's probably more Lori's expertise, can disrupt sleep.
Yeah. My husband naturally just gets up really, really early. So I follow suit.
Oh,
yeah. So he's my alarm clock.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm telling on myself, but like I was the kid, and I've mastered this since I was a kid. Like, I can smack an alarm clock like 80 times in my sleep and not know I'm doing it. I'm a pro at that. So having it, great. Yeah, if it's nearby, I can do that in my sleep and whack it and not even realize it. But if I have to get up and go turn it off, I'm up. I'm not getting, I won't even hit the snooze. I'm up, and then game over at that point too. So there's a multitude of benefits of having it, out of reach. You don't lay in bed and scroll in the mornings. And, I think it's helpful too with our mindset to not like end our day looking at things that may not be beneficial, and not starting your day with that. If you pop, open your phone and you're in bed in the morning and there's all the doom and gloom news, it's hard to have a good day after that.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You've been fantastic, April. Yeah. Awesome tips on both ends of the stress and sleep issue. So I just want to give you an opportunity to just tell us, how we can find you. And especially if anybody needs additional help in this world, you'd be a fantastic resource for them. So can you tell us your website, social media handles, and how we can keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So if anybody listening is, feeling stuck and, wants to kind of learn how to identify those hidden stressors like we were talking about, and, and learn some tools for better managing stress and finding balance, health coaching can be really helpful too. So listeners can connect with me on my website. It's aprillikins.com, which is my name, or on Instagram. My handle's a little different. It's Glow Be Lovely on there too. And then I have a brand new free resource on my website called 15 Ways to Say Goodbye to Chronic Stress, which has a lot of the tips that we were talking about today. So if you didn't take notes, no worries. I got you covered there. Mm-hmm. And, just if you're struggling and you're not sure where to start with stress and balance of sleep, feel free to connect. I offer a 20-minute coffee chat too. So you're welcome to pop over to my website, again, aprillikins.com, and schedule that, or just say hi, on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever you are. It's always great to hear from people and hear if this, the conversation was helpful or any takeaways too. I love hearing from listeners.
That's wonderful, April. Thank you so much for being here today. I know you've shared some very stress-free tips.
Thank you so much, Lori and Omar. It was a pleasure talking to you guys.
Same here.
All right. Care. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you've really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.